So I'll ask the master of ceremonies, Paul, if you could put up the first slide, and I'll explain where that came from.
Absolutely, and the bibbidi bobbidi boop, and here we go. It's showing now for you, sir.
Oh yeah, right. So this was told to me at the London GT. So to give context to this, what happened? Well, this is my last tournament I've done with Slaves of Darkness. Um, Someone pulled out the tournament at the last moment, so three of us had to work out who was going to get a game. So what we decided to do was we all rolled a d6, and whoever the two people who rolled the highest would play each other, and the other person would get a bye. This was the worst six I've ever rolled in my life. I rolled a six, and I got to play Russ Taylor's Carriageful Overlords right after the new book had come out. I lasted a turn and a half. That whole tournament, he played 20 minutes. He shot me off the table, and I was done. So I had about 3.5 hours to spare. Right? At this point, I was already not really feeling it with Slaves of Darkness. I loved it when I had the list that I was doing a lot of Isle of God stuff because it's kind of janky and kind of fun. Anyway, so I'm going around talking to people, and Russ is stood there. I spoke to Russ on a couple of occasions. I know who he is. He would not know who I am. But I said to him, it's like, out of interest, as someone who performs very well at these tournaments, like, how do you go into list building? And he basically said this to me, word for word, find a good thing and spam it. So if for Slaves of Darkness, which will come to that list, that's the list I built here to show. But the principle is basically, every book has its standouts. Every book has the one thing that the designer really got behind, whether they're trying to sell more of it or it's a new model, but it does its job better. And it's not necessarily that it kills the most things, but it might have standard points. An example is Skull Crushers for Khorne. It's a 2-up save. They're not the most kiddie thing. They've got charge impact, they've got and stuff like that. But their job is to get in there and stand still, and you can't kill them. Now I have taken lists with 12 Skull Crushers, sorry, and done really well with them because I had just ran up and won on primary. So I just blocked people in and done. It's about that kind of method of list building, pardon me, of doing that. What works, do all of that. Accentuate the positives, hide the negatives. So I can't think who's first on this one. So go to the next slide.
Slaanesh. I'll go to the next slide and we'll just play it, shall we?
Yeah, excellent. Okay, so,
yes. So yeah, basically, Michael's asked us to kind of go out and look at these lists and everything. And I personally have 3 forces that I've run with and worked with. Now, the whole idea of what Russell said to you with the idea of spam the thing and that works. This is something that's happened recently with the new Slaanesh book, and that is, I don't know whether it's a good thing, but they've essentially made the Slaanesh force very shooty. And with that in mind, it kind of forces you down this direction of if you want to kind of maximize getting the depravity points that the Slaanesh actually benefit highly from, and also their bonuses, then having something like a shooty army kind of really helps you ramp that up before you then start getting into combat. So with this in mind, this is kind of a list I just pulled together for this. And in particular, it's essentially a 2-drop. And what you actually have here is quite simple. You always have the Contorted Epitome at the moment. It's great for this GHB. It can force the opponent, well, it does force the opponent to reroll spells, spellcasting, I believe it is. Get a Lord of Pain in there, and you'll understand why in a second. Now, this is in the Pretender's host. With that, it means that basically you get 3 command points at the start of each hero phase instead of just the 1 when your general is alive. And then that general can actually issue the same command up to 3 times. So you can do all-out attack 3 times, all-out defense, so on and so forth. So this is where it kind of comes into its own, because afterwards we'll leave the other 2 heroes in the meantime. We'll then go down to units, which are here. I've got 4 units of Blissbarb Archers. And the idea is they just get all out attack, which means they're hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s. Well, hitting on 2s actually now, I think it is. Yeah, I think it's hitting on 2s, wounding on 3s. And -1 damage. They fire 2 shots each. So although it says 11 Bliss Barbs, it's actually 21 shots. I won't go into how it gets to 21, but it is 21 shots. So essentially there you have got 21, 40, 60, 80 like 86, 85, 86 attacks, 84 attacks. God, great with my maths there. 84 shots coming off them. And it just kind of brings them down. Now, the great thing about it is that you then get your Painbringers in there and Slick Blade Seekers, sorry, and they're the ones who then farm the depravity up when they go in with their merciless slaughter. And the Hellstriders are there just kind of almost provide a shield. Now, the reason this works so well is because it protects your main force from combat. You keep them back. The Bliss Barbs can run and shoot, so they can try and avoid the combat. But at the same time, you have the Mask in there, who can go off and farm depravity. And you got Sigvold, who can hold his own. The Lord of Pain goes in with some of the Murmurish Painbringers. And with his Strength of Godhood and Crown of Dark Secrets, it means that he's buffing himself and then significantly nerfing the opponent, one opponent unit. It's the Crown of Dark Secrets. You choose an enemy unit at the beginning of the battle, and then as long as that general is within 6 inches of it, their attacks characteristic, all their attacks characteristic go down to 1 for melee weapons. It could be a lot of NPE in this kind of, which is why I don't play at the moment. But ultimately, your archers do a lot of the work. Your crews come in and mop up what is left, and then you get a lot of depravity for it. So this is something that I've seen used before, where it actually works. It's done well in tournaments by other players and some of the more meta players. And ultimately, yeah, it does what it does on what it says on the basket. Use lots of archers, spam them, and you should do well.
Yeah, I've heard basically if you go to any Slaanesh chat or things, people always say if you're not taking at least 33 Bliss Barb archers, you are pretty much hamstringing yourself because they are just so good at the moment.
Yeah.
But also what you said, I guess, kind of speaks quite to what one of the strengths of the Slaanesh book is that there's a lot of what's it called? Things work well together. 3 all-out attacks on your Bliss Barb archer is going to clear out most things. Sigvold's great. Did he speak about the mask? I love the mask.
Yeah, so the mask's capability as well for him is that at the beginning of the game, he can kind of essentially teleport. And normally when you have that you teleport, you're always 9 inches away from the enemies. He can actually reset up 3 inches away from an enemy. So he then goes in, you then buff him up with his ability, because one of his abilities allows him to add 3 attacks or 3 wounds, heal 3 attacks or heal 3 wounds, yeah. And essentially you go in turn 1, you give him the combat ability of any damage he does gains depravity. He then runs in there with 9 attacks. You probably do best day ever on him because why not? It's turn 1. All out attack, that's hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s, -2 for 2 damage or 3 damage each. That's it could be anywhere between 18 and 27 damage if I can remember the damage characteristic. Now, okay, some people will actually save against that and everything, but that's a lot of depravity in the offset. You're definitely going to get to your first stage, which is then a board-wide -1 to hit against Slaanesh. So
Yeah.
he does work. He can do work. And it's once again, it's a negative play experience because your opponent has no chance to do anything initially, especially if you're going like if you get it down to 1 drop, even better, because hopefully then you actually have the opportunity to control who goes first. So yes, you know, it does do stuff.
Yeah, setting up 3 inches away. I mean, you have 2 chances to roll a 3-inch charge. Paul, have you had any experience of failing that a 3-inch charge twice anytime recently?
Well, yes, Michael.
Jason, any comments on this?
No, I have, yes, and it can work. It does happen. Okay, and yes, the curse is still with me.
Multiple times to you, Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's MPE if you can pull off the MPE. Jason, you've played Slaanesh quite a bit. I think most of the old book when you were playing it, Paul. But what are your thoughts? Lots of shooting here.
Lots of shooting. From what I've learned about Slaanesh new book, it's just what it does to you. So it just forces the opponent to do things. Like Daughter Epitome, it's the reroll successful, isn't it, Al?
Yeah, I thought it was the Infernal Rapturous.
It may be. Paul,
No. The Infernal Rapturous forces the rerolls. Oh yes, no. Sorry then. Yes, okay. Perhaps it doesn't have that in Contorted Epitome. Sorry. Oh no, it gets to reroll its own one. Reroll its own casting. I will
Reroll
double
its
check
own.
that. But yeah, sorry, yeah.
Okay.
They do go down, but they're just the debuffs against your army stack up quickly. That's what I learned is when I fought it against with OBR, they completely cut the knees off a group of 6 Immortus Guard from turn 1. And okay, it took them still a couple of turns to kill them, but they just cut them at the knees and they just couldn't do anything. And it really, really made me struggle the entire game. I did lose that one eventually.
And for anyone who watches this, I want you to bear in mind the sadness about having Immortus Guard when we get to another list that Jason's designed, where he's talking about poor Immortus Guard not being able to go into the ledge. Oh, my 2-up saves.
Low tier.
Oh, no.
I'm going to a list soon that doesn't have any saves. Pretty.
Sticking with you, Jason, you brought us an IDK list, which is to give a quick introduction to this. Is that if anyone knows IDK, they are a mid-table or mid-meta army at the moment. I think a slight improvement last time, but with the spam in mind about what's good, and spamming that. Do you want to talk to us about the IDK list you've brought here?
Yes, I will say this has been proven through a few tournaments recently, very similar lists. But I'll run through what they do in a minute. But Achillean King is the standard hero you take. He's your general. His command trait is the main reason you have him as your general. His standard attack profile he's got multiple attacks, but his main one he hits with it's normally 3 attacks, 3s, 2s, -2 for 2. With the buffs that he gives himself, as well as the Unstoppable Fury, that just increases. So, Unstoppable Fury, when he's affected by something called High Tide, each round for an IDK army changes the tide that happens, and each of those has a different effect on the army for the entire round. So High Tide basically gives strike first across everything. All my army gets strike first, and that's on turn 3. When he's affected by High Tide, he gets +2 to his attack profile for every enemy unit within 3 inches. So his 3 attacks quite often goes to 7, 9 attacks. And when he's got his buff on him and when he's charged, because he'll charge in at this stage, it'll be equivalent of something like 7 to 9 attacks, 2s, -3 for 3. He just... They call him, his nickname's the Slap King. He goes in there, slaps something down, and quite often dies. But it's just amazing. He does have impact hits as well, but that's minimal sort of thing. It's nothing. But he does have an ability to give High Tide to D3 units at some other time, whenever I choose, basically. So I could give it in turn 1 to... It already gets it in turn 3, so there's no point 4 or 5. So I can give strike first to a fair few units from him as well. You would normally give it to himself straight away, because then that unlocks his command trait. So he gets incredibly powerful. Next hero is Lotan. Mainly because he fits into the points, but he does do something vital for the army. He's a bit slower, so you've just got to somehow try and keep him up with the sharks. But +1 to wound bubble for all IDK units wholly within 12. It's alright. Here's a 5+ ward, nothing that special. Once per battle, he can give one friendly IDK unit access to a ritual, it's called. Your rituals, I've got them down here because I can remember. It depends on the tide you're playing with. So turn 1 and turn 5, you can't be picked to be a shooting attack if you're outside of 12, like the battle plan at the minute. But you just pick a unit and you can't be shot out of 12 for that one turn. The other one, add 1 to run and charge on turn 2. On turn 3, Namati units, the little guys that I don't have, so won't be used, gets 5+ ward. Or the one that I really have never used, but I really like the idea of it. In turn 4, we get retreat and charge. It basically does mortals as I retreat. So
Okay, yeah.
as I retreat on a 4+, it does D3 mortals to you. And then if I'm doing that with the king, if somehow he survives that long, and charge back in, it's done mortals on the retreat, mortals on the charge, and then he can hit you again. So it's just a nice one to have. It's something that you could choose. But you can give that to a unit. And the main bulk of the army. 4 lots of 2 sharks. The reason you choose 2 is because the second one gets +1 to hit. It becomes the champion of the
Okay.
group. 3 lots of. It's called one bloodthirsty shiver, bloodthirsty shiver, but it's effectively 3 sharks that are in separate units, but are sort of grouped together, sort of.
Okay. Okay. So like we see with
Semi-battalion.
some of the Warcry kind of deal, they're taken as one, but they are separate units.
Yeah, precisely. So in total, there's 11 sharks. There are 2 different shooting profiles, but the main one you take, that will be 44 shots in total. 3s, -1 for D3 damage.
Okay.
So fairly decent shooting attacks there. 24-inch range, so they can hit most of the board as well.
Yeah, but you can't get shot outside of 12 because that would be unfair.
That's only if I've got that ritual going.
Why would you never have that ritual going?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, that was straight away. That's only on turn 1 and turn 5 though, so it just saves you for the first turn. But then you're within 12 anyway after that save. So
yeah,
whatever.
Yeah, most of the time.
The other part of this is, although they have really good shooting attacks, their melee attacks are not half bad. Each shark gets 6 attacks, 3s, -1 for 1. And standard 3 attacks, 3s, -2 for 2. If a model's died in that turn, or if someone's got a wound next to it, they get an extra one of their -2 rend attacks. So
Okay.
good shooting, good in combat, 14-inch move with fly, and they're just 8 wounds apiece on a 4+ save. So, I suppose the groups of 2, they're coherent at 3 inches instead of 1 inch. So you don't even have to keep them like butted up to each other. You can get a bit of distance between them.
Oh, so the unit of 2, you mean?
Yeah, the unit of 2 can
Okay,
be
so
3
but
inches
yeah,
apart.
the bloodship can go anywhere they want, I guess.
Yeah, they're different.
Yeah.
Bloodthirsty Shiver, because basically you can choose 1 shark in that Bloodthirsty Shiver each combat phase, and 6s to hit for the -2 rend attack, do double hits. If they're within 3 inches of another one from that Bloodthirsty Shiver, 6s to hit do 3 hits. So they're fairly powerful. You're hunting for 6s on the hit, but if you get a couple of 6s, your 4 attack suddenly goes into 8.
Yeah.
8 attacks -2 for 2 damage each. They get very dangerous.
Yeah, there's a big swing up. When you some we've all seen it. We grab a handful of dice, we roll it, we get 5 6s, and it does nothing. And we're like, why am I spiking here? Here's the kind of place you roll it when you spike. Yeah, spike. You're clearing something.
Very much.
Which is fantastic. Really, really good. Is this a list that we're going to be seeing you put on a table?
Not quite. Similar, but not quite.
The word "quite" worries me. Cool.
As you can tell, there are still sharks on the go.
Can't say no. You fought IDK a few times. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I kind of, Jason has had this for kind of force for a while now. The Killing King is just lethal, where he jumps in and he kind of swings his pole arm around, and yeah, your unit's just like fold in half. So it is scary. It's gonna be interesting to see. Like Jason said, like this has gone Form 1, even 5-0. I think it's gone 5-0 in the last couple of weeks. So people are picking up IDK with the intention of the sharks now cheap enough to spam and actually do the work that is intended for them to do. I can see this being a regular one that you may see coming out of tournaments, and ultimately, like Jason said, you're spamming all the same sharks. You may put some bloodthirsty for the extra bonus, but ultimately, this is a unit that works.
Yeah, absolutely. I have faced a Killing King before. You're right. He will put you down. that was actually my first tournament. I had the Killing King in it, my first ever game. So that was my introduction to.
Oh,
So that's
wow.
what Little Heroes can do to when they go. The other thing the other thing this list has taught me is the sharks are called allopexes, which definitely means Games Workshop tried to copyright the word shark, got told no, and they were like, okay, allopex. So now we have to call them allopexes. Yeah, a 2-drop as well. Drops are obviously important with a 14-inch move and 24. If you get priority, I mean, you're putting the work in on someone, unfortunately. Some unfortunate soul.
On turn 2, for the tides, remember I can run and charge, so my guys can move a maximum of like 32 inches, and that's basically the entire army.
Yeah.
So with the plan, essentially, because you're safe outside of shooting, then you can set up, give priority away, they move forward, you shoot, double turn, charge, or worst case, you shoot, you don't get the priority, and you're still quite a bit out. Like you can even shift back on your turn to be like, you're gonna have to sit through this a couple of times before.
There's multiple ways you can do it. The way I've tried it is turn 1, I sit back and shoot. Simple as that.
Yeah.
Whether I get priority or not, I sit back and shoot. I don't really have an inkling to go into combat as much.
Yeah.
And then turn 2, that's where it gets a bit more dangerous to you, because I shoot you again and then charge my guys in. The king will give high tide something, so I'm hitting you with up to 4 units before you even get a chance to hit me back. And then obviously he's got his command ability. Fine, that's great. And then the next battle round, I strike first with all of my units for 2 turns. So it's basically taking that hit of initially on turn 1 to not charge in, to suddenly just going bang and then hit him with everything before you get hit, hit him with everything before you get hit, and just keep going, and just keep munching away and just seeing what you can do.
Yeah.
It's just a weird fun list to play.
Yeah, and that's the thing I think we said. It's quite a fun list to play. It's a lot of ball control, a lot of round control. A lot of armies, a lot of armies I play is that you don't want to be giving away. You want to be giving away priority because you don't want to face a double turn. Here, there's got a little bit of flexibility on losing a double turn because you'll most likely be outside of at least a 14 because you can shoot from 24. And you've got run and charge. I don't need to be within 14. I can be within 20, and I'm probably going to make that in. So if you wouldn't mind switching, I'll show you what the slate is about.
Yeah, it's all set.
So this is the list, essentially, when me and Russ were talking, what he mentioned. Well, he mentioned one unit of it, but it is a great example of spamming unit, which is the Chaos Knights. We saw this come second in the tournament almost with Vanguard. So swapping Vanguard for Chaos Knights essentially would be the change here. Chaos Knights with Khorne, I think you get down to 3s, 2s, 4 attacks each, -2/2. So when they hit you, you're getting hit. Slaanesh can give you run and charge. A mistake I've made here is you'd need a hero who had Slaanesh to give that command. And then we have Demonic Speed and Archaon to give a 3d6 charge. Point here is you get across that table and start hitting people hard. Again, ideally, I think Bean, who is the guy who plays the Vanguard, normally tries to go second because Vanguard can fight twice. But yeah, so the Chaos Knights with Khorne are phenomenal. You get an extra attack on the charge. Slaanesh gives the same with the banner. Chorus Cabal are just ways of just dropping on an objective. Archaon is in this particular list just for the meme because the list is about the Chaos Knights and that you can spam those. Archaon is there because one, it saved me thinking about a bunch of other stuff. You could have 3 units of. I guess you could have 3 units of double reinforced Chaos Knights, but painting those will break you before your opponent will. That's the idea with it, and I think a lot of Slaves of Darkness are probably the most honest army in the game. There's no trickery with them. They're coming to you forward. And if they're going forward, you want to get something that has the most armor so it sticks in combat. You want the most killing so it kills what it's in combat with and will stick around to pull out again. So what I used to do when I ran Chaos Knights, I gave them Zinch. So I'd run them in, and then when on my next turn I could teleport them out, then charge them in again. Because the lowest dice on the charge turns to a 4. So I'm making a minimum of 5. Most likely I'm making a 9-inch charge. if I'm rolling 2 dice with a reroll. And it's just keeping that cycle going with Slaves of Darkness. Some go in, they get pulled out, more go in, they get pulled out, more go in. Ideally. And yeah, an Archaon with the Nurgle mark is just a horrible thing to play against. Like with a Mystic Shield, you're on 2 op save, 5 ward, you get -1 rent. No, is it -1 to wound? Horrible to deal with. But they are the best things. Corvus Cabal is the most commonly picked Warcry. So whether it is Warcry band, they are deep strikers. So people keep them off the edge of the board. You rush all your stuff up, and you drop them onto objectives. So you maintain control whilst all your big guys are doing work up the board. You might see Splinter the Fang, a lot of mortal wound attacks again. Oh, and that thing, the other thing, particularly in this meta, is that there's a 5-up rune shield ward on the knights for magic or mortal wounds. So if you're taking D3 mortal wounds, you have on a 5-up, you have a 33% chance of ignoring each wound. There's a lot of sticking around on this thing. And you've got your horse kicks as well, which are fun, but don't normally do well.
Yeah.
It's fours, no ends, essentially. The other thing here is to follow the path of glory as the battle trait. Here with an undivided, I know I've messed up here because that should be a Slaanesh, but if you're undivided, you heroic action, you pick there's one that lets you roll 3 dice on the Ida God's table. Undivided will let you re-roll one of them. And Chaotic Contract lets you roll. So basically you roll 3 dice, you're looking for a 5 and it's 2. You need 2 dice to be a 5 or a 6. You roll 3 dice, then you can re-roll 1. So getting that grand strategy is pretty easy. In fact, I think last time me and you at that tournament played with each other, my first roll was Chaotic Conduit. My second roll got me my Demon Prince on my Chaos Sorcerer. Like, it's really that straightforward. So this whole list is about that kind of, they're the best things in the game. That gives you grand strategy. Chaos Knights will kill everything in front of it. And Vanguard have option with their fight twice, will punch through. But then you'll have, Being to the Be'lakor and some Chaos Sorcerers. So that's kind of the Slaves of Night way. You want something on a horse, basically.
I was just going to say, like, you've chosen 2 units of 10 Chaos Knights on this one. Is it just down to points restrictions that you weren't able to take Vanguard instead?
Not with Archaon, you wouldn't be able to take 2 units of Vanguard.
No, if you throw one unit of Vanguard, 1 unit of Chaos Knights, is that possible or not really still?
No, because you won't have enough points for the battle line and the sorcerer hero in there as well.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, so that's where the tightness is. I have ran you can do Archaon, 3 units of 3 Vanguard and 2, I think I had 2 swords.
Sorry about that, folks. It seemed like my Discord had enough of us talking and decided to switch itself off. So we are back now, and we can continue. Like Michael was just continuing talking about the difference with the Vanguard and Chaos Knights. Sorry about that, Michael. Carry on.
No, it's right. I teach at university. I'm used to people shutting down when I talk too much. So Discord, I get it. I have seen people shut down in front of me. So Vanguard get a fight twice. That is kind of their big push. Is what you want to use them for. But with Archaon, blocks of knights is the easiest way of doing it. You have those 3 go in, and then you have your back line just control objectives, try and get cycling around. You have both played my Slaves of Darkness. You have both beaten my Slaves of Darkness, which shows you how good. But I was actually running this list. I was taking the Vanguard,
you had
Vanguard,
Knights,
and it's at that tournament we last played, which Russ gave me the advice of, you list of shit. Why aren't you spamming the good things? But yeah, so we all thought we've faced Slaves of Darkness before.
Well, my experience has been against yourself. No, I've actually played against one other opponent, I believe, in very similar roles. And I was actually playing as a Fire Slayers. And so the impact of the Chaos Knights and the likes of Vanguard is just quite scary, to be honest. Like I had a 40 wound unit of fast level Volkites with shields, so I could get them up to like a 3-up save, 4-up, 3-up save, and you just chop through them. Your particular unit cleared that unit in one go. And unfortunately, the terrain, once again, and I'm so cursed by the terrain as well, the terrain actually slowed my progression on trying to take you out. So, having fought against knights, it's hard. It's very hard. And when they do work, like yours did, it can decimate armies. Yeah.
Yeah, if you get the full charge in, so the bonus on the charge, to clarify, is with knights you get +1 to rend and +1 to damage. With Vanguard, I think it's +1 to wound and +1 to rend. So there'd be -3 too. So yeah, both, and you're fighting twice. Both will, most things will get picked up by that. But probably those poor immortal scars who only have their pitiful 2-up save, 6 wounds. Bodyguard.
More bodyguard when you charge your Vanguard into it with the harvester standing behind it.
Yeah, that was just as bad. Jason. Yeah, Jason, what were your thoughts when you fought Slaves before?
When I fought them before, they are tough fighting. They're mobile. Old rules for OBR. My OBR actually quite well just because of my recursion in the lists. Without that, you'd have walked straight over me, honestly.
Yeah.
The Vanguard on the charge are insane. And this one, Chaos Knights, from what I remember, when I fought you last time, they were scary, but they didn't really get in the fight much because it was the Vanguard at that stage who were still trying to chop.
Yeah, and I took Zinch, which was a teleport one. So I lost 10 attacks off the attack, basically, which is a substantial amount to lose. Because I wanted to be sure I was the smartest player in the world with all my teleporting knights, as opposed to an averagely competent player who took Khorne. Which actually I think brings us back to the point of this philosophy of list building, is that if you're building this, I think it's the spike play where you're looking to get results. And mine was like when I was building this particular list was, and we'll talk about this kind of list philosophy building later on, is I wanted some jank in there. I wanted something to play with. I fell out with Slade of Darkness when I couldn't keep rolling on the Isle of Gods because I love random stuff happening. That's what I like in my games. So I took Zinch because I wanted stuff coming out. And that is a good example of a way that when you build to be good, exaggerate the positives. Knights are good at charging. Make them better on the charge. Don't give them something extra to make them a little bit more flexibility. It's like, no, it has one job. It does that job well. And that's it. Blitzbarb Seekers. We're not talking about, oh, if I give them one in charge, they're better now. It's like, no, all out attack. They're all good at shooting. Would make them better at shooting. Sharks. It's about exaggerating those stats and not looking for the fun thing, which is a player personality. Not everyone does it. It is not how I like to build the list. I'm quite happy in the mid tables with my jank. I think we're probably all on the same page with that one. But that's something to remember. That's the philosophy of these lists. It's get what's good, make it better, get the points. And that. Any last thoughts before we move on to the second way of building lists we're looking at?
No, like you said, I think we'll definitely have to introduce the conversation of the psychographical profiles, which is a conversation in its own right. But like you said, this sort of mentality is definitely what's referred to as a spike type player. So we will certainly explore that further in due course.
Yes, absolutely. Jason, any last thoughts before we go on to the second bit of advice?
I want to fight Archaon. I've never fought him. I need to take him down.
I'm looking at building some Archaon lists, so I'll make some time for you so you can fight him. I can't put him into my Skaven army, but I can put him into a Khorne one because I want to play a Blast Stampede of Khorne, and Archaon's good with that because he does his own thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Next
up. There we go. Next